What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dylan and I am a third year medical student studying in Australia. Today I thought I would answer probably one of my most requested videos, which is to do a video on the portfolio as a part of the medical school application process in Australia. Specifically, there are only 3 universities that I know of that accept portfolios. These are Notre, Sydney, Notre, Fremantle, and also Wollongong University. So if you're interested in applying to those universities, then you're going to need to do a portfolio. I've had to go through this process and it can be pretty grueling and it's a very long one. So let's get stuck into the video. The portfolio, the templates and the guidelines will be released later this month in April generally, but they don't tend to change that much between years. You can definitely find what type of things they're going to be asking you about and specifically the different sections. So both universities, and when I'm saying both universities, Notre, Sydney and Fremantle, you just fill in one portfolio for those. Wollongong is a completely separate portfolio, but they generally have similar categories. The portfolio itself is structured in such that you have 4 examples for Notre, 5 examples for Wollongong, and you need to give 4 examples of leadership, 4 examples of community service, for example, 4 examples of academic excellence or high achievement. And then for Notre itself, you also need to include a personal statement about your intentions for wanting to study medicine, pursue a career in medicine, and also why you specifically want to go to Notre. Wollongong, on the other hand, don't have a personal statement section, but they definitely make up for it because under the leadership section, you'll have 5 examples that you need to include. You'll also need to have 5 examples of service, 5 examples of working with others, 5 examples of diversity and academic excellence or academic achievement and high achievement in some sort of human endeavor. So Wollongong has many more sections. You have to include 1 extra example in each of those sections, but it doesn't have a personal statement. So this all is a part of the GAMSAT application. So when you actually go to submit your portfolio at the end, you'll supply it all through GAMSAT, and that's where you also put your preferences for which universities you want to attend. That's a lot of information, so I'll let that digest a little. I'm going to give you guys some general guidelines and principles. I'm not going to give you my exact portfolio that I submitted. That's not going to be useful for you, but I'll just give you some insights into what I think works, maybe what I think they're looking for. Obviously, this is just my opinion. I was successful in getting into university, so obviously my portfolio must have been enough to get me an interview, which is good. So I hope this sort of qualifies me as somebody who can give some sort of advice, but definitely don't just listen to me. There's lots of people talking about it online, and I'm sure you have friends that you can also ask about their portfolios and what they included. Before we get into those guiding principles though, let's make ourselves a coffee, get yourself a drink, and I will see you in a second. Cheers. Okay, so got my coffee. I've written a few notes down because I don't want to steer people in the wrong direction and I don't want to be giving false information. It's full disclaimer, these are my opinions. These are things that I took into consideration when I was writing my portfolio. I wrote 2 portfolios and on my second attempt I managed to get an interview and then I got straight in with my first interview into Notre, Sydney. So that's my journey with the whole portfolio process, and I definitely changed quite a few aspects of my portfolio from the first time to the second time. So hopefully some of these things can help. First off, I think it's important when you're thinking of your examples that time is super important. So try to avoid one-off volunteering events that were only over a weekend or a few hours. That doesn't really show a commitment to whatever the cause is, even if it's a really great cause. Do something that you've stayed dedicated to over a number of months, years. The longer the better, and that is something that they take into consideration. Another thing obviously is use your best examples that you have and you can use them in multiple areas. So if you have an example of leadership, for me, I was a swimmer and I reached quite a high level. I competed at the Olympic trials for London, and so I used that for both leadership because I was the captain of the swim team, and I also used it as my achievement for achievement in an area of human endeavor. So you can use it multiple times, but just if you can use multiple different examples, that's obviously going to be stronger. In addition to using the best examples you have and obviously having a longer time if you can, the third thing that I want to say is, what did you learn from the experience? And this is probably the most important part that I think a lot of people get wrong. So in a portfolio, if you say that you achieved something and you write that as the topic or the heading, and then you go on to exactly explain what you did, that's great, but you also need to say, what did you learn from that experience? And always thinking, why would that be something that they would be looking for a medical school applicant? So if you think about leadership and you're talking about a captaincy position that you had, don't just say, I captained my team to win a game, we got this many points, and this was great because I brought everyone together. Focus more on how you brought everybody together, because that shows how you were a great leader. It shows how you were great with teamwork, and it's more about those sort of values and those sort of themes that they're really caring about when you're writing your portfolio and when they're reading it, so that they can get a better understanding of who you are as a person. You don't have many words, it's 80 words. You have to fit in what you've done, what you learned, and also always considering why that might be something that's good for a doctor to have. Why is that characteristic something that you would want to see in a health professional? Next thing, start now. So don't leave your portfolio to the last few weeks. It's definitely not going to be enough time, especially considering that you need to get references for every single example that you have, and that includes having a phone number and I believe their email address. So that's really hard. You have to think about the person that you want to ask to be your reference. You need to notify them, most likely. Is probably the best thing to do, because otherwise they're going to get a phone call from the university and not know who's calling them. So you want to warn them that they're going to be receiving a call. Normally they call them after the interview process, but they can call them any point along the application process. So that takes a long time to get all your references and their phone numbers. Make sure you do this early. I would start now. It is middle of April, and you have usually until the end of May to submit your application. When thinking about things that you want to include in your portfolio section, look at your resume, your CV, look at even go onto Facebook and have a look at old photos. You might see awards that you've won, things that you've just completely forgotten about that are going to be great examples of things that you've achieved and done in your life. My one request to everybody that's watching, listening is please, please, please do not leave submitting your application and your portfolio to the last day. I remember when I was doing this, the first time that I submitted my portfolio and my entire GEMSAT application, that I left it until the last day. I was finishing up my references at 9 p.m. the day it was due, end of May, and I went to hit submit. It took half an hour to load the next page so that I could hit continue to submit, and there was about 4 or 5 different pages that I needed to get through in order to submit it overall. So do not leave it, because I ended up submitting at 11:30 that night, just in time, and I just wish that upon absolutely no one. You don't want that to be reason that you don't get your application in, and you definitely don't want that to be the reason that you don't get into medical school. So whenever you find out what date that medical school portfolio application is due by GEMSAT, take it a day before and make sure you get it in that day before, because the whole system will be clogged the night of, and yeah, it's just a nightmare. So save yourself the stress. Now I'm going to go through some specific examples of things that I included. At least I'll tell you about some themes that I've included in my specific sections of leadership, academic excellence, and achievement, and hopefully this can help some people and get your ideas flowing about things that you can include. All right, let's get out of here, because, let's get out of this space. I can't physically go outside given the current climate, but we can definitely go and explore my little apartment. So 3, 2, 1. Leadership. All right, so for leadership, you're going to want to consider a few things. So leadership can be considered in a very literal sense, where you are leading a group of people through some sort of problem or obstacle. And this could be something like you were a captain of a sporting team or a leader or captain of a debating team, something like that. Or you can think of leadership in many different ways. And I think taking things from multiple perspectives is the best way to tackle the portfolio. So, for example, you could suggest that you were a leader in that literal sense, where you were a captain of something. Then you could also say that you were a leader in another role. Maybe this was through a volunteering thing or a work opportunity where you were a leader by leading by example, and then that inspired other people to maybe follow in your footsteps. You can consider yourself a leader within a team. So for my example, I used a medical emergency case that I had in the hospital where I was a leader by taking control and ownership over my small role within that emergency situation. So that's a way that you can be a leader without being the typical sense of a leader, because obviously in that scenario, the anaesthetist was the leader of the entire scenario. But for my role as an operations assistant in the theatres, I was a leader in doing the compressions and making sure that I was getting all of my equipment ready. The third way is to lead by empowering others to lead for themselves or to lead others. So you can be a leader by supporting other people to achieve their own dreams and goals. And that could be something through like tutoring or teaching. Something along those lines might be quite beneficial. Most important thing with leadership is don't write 4 or 5 examples all about being a captain of something, or that very literal sense of leadership, because it doesn't show that you understand what the different aspects of leadership are. So tackle all of these things from different angles, and I think you'll find that you'll do a lot better. And this is pretty much a general principle for all the aspects of the portfolio. Really try to think widely about what the topic means and how you might be able to view it from a different standpoint. All right, so that's leadership done. Let's get into academic experience. Sorry, I was just busy achieving all my dreams and just smashing all my goals.
This is a terrible look. Okay.
What's the purpose of all this? So, in Australia, we typically have this sense where we don't want to brag about our achievements, and in fact, I think most people in their portfolio have this problem. One big thing you don't want to do in your portfolio is underplay the things that you've done and the things that you've achieved, because this is an ability to sell yourself in the right way. Again, not being cocky, not embellishing, but just doing it in a way that really presents all of the things that you've done in that role. So you've only got 80 words to explain what you've done, how it will relate to medicine, and why it's a good example of why you would make a good medical student and doctor. So just make sure you don't sell yourself short. One thing about academic experience, I wouldn't include your university undergraduate degree in that example. They already have that seen in your academic transcript. They know that you've done a degree. You don't need to show that you've just done another degree in that academic experience part. But what you could talk about is any awards that you achieved during that time. Did you do any research? Did you present any posters? Did you get any awards, even if they were small class awards? Put those sorts of things in there. I think I did originally include my honours research year because I had done some aspects of research in that I was able to include in my academic part. So you could do that just depending on whether or not you think it's already covered in your application already, because you really want to give them more information than they already have. They know your GPA, they know what subjects you've studied before, so don't just include that by itself. Include things that you've learnt along the way, and include things that you've achieved or won along the way, just to fill out that area. And that's really them trying to get to know you better. So put as much details as you can into those 80 words, because you only have 80 words per bit for Notre Dame. I think for Wollongong it's maybe even less. So keep it concise, succinct, and yeah, you'll do really well. All right, so I think we're done. Let's just do a very quick wrap up, and I'm just going to exit the same way I came in. Peace. Okay, so the next section is service to community. That's if you're in the Notre Dame portfolio, or service ethic if you're looking at the Wollongong example. So for service to community, pretty obvious. They want you to talk about your volunteering experiences. You can also include some paid work experiences as long as they are still a service to a community, although I would avoid this if possible. So yes, get out all of your volunteering experiences that you've done in your life and get them on the page. I volunteered with St. John Ambulance, and I also volunteered with the Red Cross. You could also do a major fundraising event. So my friend and I raised a bunch of money for the hospital that we work at. That was an example of service to the community where we rode 200 kilometers and were able to raise just over $14,000. Anything like that is a really good example of service to community. And I'm sure, as you can see in the recent COVID outbreak, how important service to community is, especially with how celebrated healthcare professionals have been throughout this pandemic. So that's why they include it in the portfolio, and that's why you need to have good examples of it. Oh, and a side note, with the Notre Dame application, it says service to community / church involvement. Don't worry if you don't have any church involvement, if you're not religious or you don't have any of those examples. I didn't have any of those examples, so it doesn't matter that much. But if you do have those examples available to you, definitely include them. Sorry, there was a bit of fluff on my microphone. All right, next. So we've covered academics, we've covered human endeavour, we've covered service, and we've covered leadership. So there's a couple of extra sections in the Wollongong application that I thought I'd just quickly speak to. Teamwork is the section. You're going to need this in your interview anyway, so it's a good idea to have some examples of how you've worked collaboratively within a team. This is pretty standard for most CVs and resumes anyway, so check your CV, get that done. It's pretty self-explanatory. Teamwork. I'm sure you have many examples. Use different contexts from school, university, volunteering. You've heard all this sort of stuff before. Just get that one done. And it's very small in terms of the word count. But obviously it's super important in healthcare that you can work within a team, because there's no single doctor that knows everything. There's no single professional that knows everything. And often when we're talking about saving someone's life, it takes many hands in order for that to come together. So that's why teamwork's there. That's why you need to include it. That's all I have to say on that one. A final word on the diversity section. So I included that I'd done quite a lot of French, both at school and university. You know, just normalement, pendant le week-end, je travaille avec mes amis et je vais au cinéma. You know, everyone goes to the cinema, you'll find, when you're doing French. So I probably completely butchered that, so apologies to anyone who's from France watching. Do you do some music? Have you taught music before? Have you traveled to any weird exotic locations and done something cool? I did Everest Base Camp. That was kind of challenging and a good little weird example that I included in there. Do you do any cooking? Just literally think of all these diverse things that you can do, and obviously you need to have references for them, so try to pick things that you can at least call upon someone that can verify that experience for you. But yeah, again, pretty self-explanatory. Take what you've learned from those experiences, and obviously in this section they're just trying to get a better understanding of how well-rounded you are, and also trying to think about different patients come from very different walks of life, and by showing that you've had a diverse range of experiences in your life, you'll be able to better empathize with people and connect with people on different levels. So I think that's why they throw it in there. That's how I took it anyway. So that's the advice on that one. Just some final words on the personal statement, which is only a component of the Notre Dame application. Personal statement. Make it personal. And this is where I think people often see other people's personal statements and try to rejig them for themselves. Don't do that. Important things not to do. Don't mention money ever in your interview, in your medical application. Do not mention money as a reason for why you want to study medicine. Number 2, don't include that your parents want you to study medicine. You can include, and some people say that you shouldn't say, my parents are a doctor. My parents are not doctors, by the way, but I think if your parents are doctors, that's not something that you chose, but you can definitely talk about it in a very positive light. But again, I wouldn't use that as the main primary example of why you want to study medicine. You could include it as an aspect of why you want to study medicine, talk about how they would talk to you about their patients and that you found it really fascinating, all those sorts of things. But again, I would try to find your own story of why you want to study medicine and just use your parents, if that's an example that you have, as something that built upon that want. For me, I spun it this way. So I said that I didn't want to study medicine. I didn't want to be a doctor as a child, because that's true. I didn't. I wanted to be the next Ian Thorpe. I wanted to swim for Australia, and I spent much of my younger years as a child and an early adult trying to pursue that dream. And then I described the types of things that I took from those experiences and how I slowly transitioned into wanting to study medicine through an interest in the human body, then doing some studies, then doing some work, then doing some volunteering experiences that all sort of aligned, and I came to this conclusion that I want to study medicine. And so that kind of painted my picture of how I wanted to do it. There are people that have wanted to be a very specific specialist for their entire life since they can remember. If that is your experience, then you should say that, and you should say why that is and what things throughout your life have reaffirmed that want and need and desire to fulfill that dream of yours. Because if you just say, I've always wanted to be a doctor, but you don't have great examples as to why, it kind of feels disingenuous. I'm not nailing this. Disingenuous. I think that's it. I feel like I stuff up on one word or two every single video. So in this personal statement, you don't need to keep talking about all of your experiences of leadership, etc. You've already put that stuff in. I think some people kind of cut paste their experiences of achievements and put them straight into the personal statement. You don't need to do that. They've already read your examples, but you can loosely put them in. And the way that I'll say that is that you're describing why you want to study medicine. You might throw in a few examples of things that have inspired you to continue to pursue medicine as a career. And then you also need to specifically talk about why you want to study at Notre Dame. And some things that you would want to know in this section is, what is the medical curriculum and program at Notre Dame? What does it look like? And how is the teaching done? What are the types of things that the university values, and what is the mission of the university? I think it's really important that you go onto the university website, check the about page, look these things up, ask people that are at the university. If you have friends that are students there at the moment, even if they're not in medicine, you can ask them about what the type of the vibe is at Notre Dame, and that'll help you to gain a bit of a better understanding of what to expect. It's also going to help you really work out whether or not you want to put Notre Dame as a first preference, second preference, sixth preference, or not included at all. If you're sitting there saying, Dylan, I don't have any friends at all, then I feel you. But if you're sitting there saying, I don't have any friends at Notre Dame that are studying medicine, then one thing you can do is follow me on Instagram, shameless plug, but I share my experience of medical school, and there are a bunch of people that do share their experience of medical school at Notre Dame. So if you're wanting to have a look at that, I can definitely point you in the right direction. I'm a third year, so I generally include my lectures that I do. I do a back to base day where I go back to university and we do lectures and little tutorials, and the rest of my week normally when we're not in lockdown is at the hospital. That'll pretty much explain what I'm doing day to day, and you'll get a better sense of what it's like to study medicine and study medicine at Notre Dame. So that's that. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. So if you have any further questions, just put a comment down in the comment section, because I'm sure, especially with the portfolio, there are lots of questions, and probably somebody out there has the exact same question to you. So if you can, put it down there and I will definitely reply to you. If you don't feel comfortable putting something down in the comments, you can reach me on Instagram, and all my details are down below. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next video that I'll be making is going to be basically a day in the life of a medical student that is not in the hospital and is at home. So hopefully we'll have a productive day there. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Oh, and if you haven't already and you got something out of this, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all those good things. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.